So 3, 2, 1. This is Dean with the Two Party Podcast. I'm on here with Michelle Tucker, and she is on here. She has got just her resume is just astounding. It just goes on forever. I'm looking at just some of her accomplishments. But what I'd like to do is allow her to kind of tell the audience exactly who she is, where she's from, how she got to where she gained her experience and got to where she is now. So Michelle, welcome to the show. Go ahead and tell us a little bit about yourself.
All right. Thank you for having me, Dean. It's a pleasure.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm Michelle Seiler Tucker. So if you try to Google me, make sure you get the Seiler in there.
Okay.
So Michelle Seiler Tucker, born in Long Beach, California, raised in Texas, live in New Orleans. So I've always been an entrepreneur at heart. I probably started my first business at the age of 14, 15. But then I got sucked into working for corporate America, worked at Xerox very quickly. Within 6 months, got the managers came to me and said, Michelle, we want you to try out for regional vice president. You'll never get it, but you should try it for the experience. And I'm like, well, if I'm not going to get it, why should I do it? And they said, because it's a great experience. So you should just do it for the experience. So I said, okay. And I was competing against people who had been there for decades. And it was about a 6-month process. And I ended up winning and beating everybody else. So all of my good friends at Xerox now hated me. So
funny how that happens.
I know. So yeah, I mean, it was like Mean Girls. Like I would go sit at the lunch table and they would all get up and leave.
Right. And I'm sure that was difficult, I'm sure that's difficult just going through the corporate world. As we know, we always hear the stories of women accomplishing things in the corporate world especially back in the 90s, 80s, 90s was very difficult and stuff. So I'm sure it was a real challenge to be able to reach that. And then when you got it, it was probably pretty exciting.
It was exciting. But then nobody wanted to talk to me or eat lunch with me. So anyway, though, it was exciting, but I did that for about, 6 or 7 months. And I was managing, like I said, 85 unruly salespeople. So now I was no longer in control of my money and how I make money because they weren't selling, so my check was dependent upon them. And my nickname at Xerox was the closer, but I still had a good 6-figure salary, making great benefits. And I decided to buy a business and just operate it on the side and still keep my corporate position. So I stumbled across a franchise that had a couple of locations and I was going to buy one of their franchises. And they said, no, we don't want you to buy. We know of you. We know of your reputation. We want you to partner with us and help put us on the map. And so I said, well, look, I'm not going to leave a six-figure job with great benefits for a company that's not successful at selling
for an unknown.
For an unknown. I said, but I tell you what, I'll do it for 6 months. We'll see how it goes. And so I went to flew all over the U.S., went to trade shows, still kept my day job at Xerox, was flying out on nights and weekends, and ended up making more money in 6 months than I did an entire year at Xerox, and ended up selling hundreds of franchises. But then I came back and told Xerox that I'm going to leave. Of course, then everybody really hated me because they didn't get the position. And then I only kept the position for like 7 or 8 months.
Right.
Maybe a year, I think. And so anyway, so then I transitioned into franchise sales, franchise development, franchise consulting. And they did what a lot of companies typically do. They start over-promising and under-delivering because they got too big for their britches.
Yeah.
So we sold so many franchises and they just couldn't handle the success because they didn't build a solid foundation like they should have. And I couldn't just in good conscience, good faith, continue to sell franchises. So I told them to buy me out and, they didn't like it, but they did it. And so anyway, so I got bought out and then I'm like, what am I going to do now?
Right.
So then I started my mergers and acquisitions business. At first I was selling like coffee shops and restaurants and stuff like that. And then I started selling, transitioning into much larger companies. But as Forbes states, 8 out of 10 businesses will not sell. 8 out of 10. So I said, well, gosh, if I'm going to eat, I need to learn. I need to fix these businesses.
Yeah.
I need to fix them. I need to grow them. I need to build to sell them. And so then I started my fix, grow, build to sell model so I could get businesses actually sellable. So I buy businesses, I flip them. I partner with business owners, putting up my money, investing my money, my expertise, my resources. and then I'd be able to sell them, in a 3 to 5 year plan. So since then, I've sold over 500 businesses. My company has sold over 1,000 businesses. Plus, I probably sold another 500, 800 franchises.
Yeah.
And now we sell businesses that are to $10 million and up. And we got 2 books out. One was Sell Your Business for More Than It's Worth, which I wrote in 2013. And then Exit Rich, that is coming out soon.
So being as busy as you are with all the businesses and the acquisitions and the things you do, how did you find time to write?
Yeah, so that's a good question, because everybody always asks me that question, because everybody wants to write a book, right? But
yeah, everybody. I mean, even myself, I've got stuff I want to put down on paper, but I never have time.
Yeah, so the way I do it is you really got to be disciplined, and look, when I did it in 2013, it's right after I had my child in 2011. So I don't know what I was thinking.
So really busy then.
I had a toddler running around. But what I do, and I've done this, and I've written 4 books. So what I do is I pick a time period, and it's always the same time. And I skip a few years in between because I need a break. But usually around Thanksgiving, usually and all through Christmas, and maybe half of January or through January, depending upon how I'm going. Usually I can write a book in 6 weeks.
Right.
But I block out that time. And that time is usually slower for us in M&A. Plus, I got a good team of people. But I write at home. I type every word in the book. I tried the voice, the audio voice.
Yeah, doing voiceover with audiobooks.
Well, number one, it never understands my accent. Number one. Number 2, then you got to go back and correct everything. And everybody's brain works differently. Mine works very well just typing. So within about 6 weeks, I can knock a book out.
Right.
But I'm disciplined. So I'll get up at like 3 o'clock or 4 o'clock in the morning, and I will write all day. And I'll write till like 5 or 6 o'clock at night, taking only a couple of breaks in between. I don't do it in the office, so I don't get distracted. And my office knows not to bother me unless it's an emergency.
Yeah.
And then it's really tough during Christmas, though, because we'll have a household.
Yep, family and everything.
Family comes in and they're like, "Hey, let's have drinks." So I'm like, wait on the drinks till like 7. 7. So yeah, you just got to be disciplined, and that's the only way that works for me, because I know writers are like, okay, well, they write every day. I can't write every day. I'm so busy.
Yeah, and I'm the same way. I get pulled away and distracted by so many things if I don't set aside the time to do certain things.
And especially if you have children, so that's what works best for me, that time period. Find a time period that works best for you. Find a quiet spot, and then just write for 8 or 9 hours a day. And that's what I do. And then, like I said, within 6 weeks, I can knock it out. Now, it's also easy. I have my team do the research. I don't have time to do the research. So I give them all the research to do. I'll write everything else, and then I plug the research in when I'm done. Yeah,
that totally makes sense. And I mean, for someone like me, like I said, I've got so many ideas and things I want to write, biographies, the whole 9. And I'm just like, where do I even start? Where am I going to have the time for this? And, so it's just one of those. And obviously with this year, it's like we have had the pandemic, and it's like, now's probably the year I should have done it and spent all this time for the past couple of months doing it while things have been slow. But things go on. I mean, I'm an owner of a construction business. I do the podcast. I stay very busy. And so, in the midst of everything I'm doing, I kind of find like, well, I should have allotted this time, but I just didn't, or something comes up emergency wise on the job. So it's like you said, I agree. You literally have to set aside that time and just block it out as this is what I'm doing.
Yeah, you have to. And, I don't do it every year because it would kill me. I love writing. So now I'm really chopping at the bit to get back to writing another one. So I'm probably thinking this year or maybe next year, I'll write my next book. But you got to start with the end in mind. You really need to figure out what your end game is and why you're trying to write a book, because there's like 30,000 books that come out every week.
Right. And it's really, it's hit or miss. If your topic's not dead on, or it's not a hot topic, a hot button topic, or something that's really engaging to certain audiences or demographics, you're really not going to go anywhere with it. You're not going to get discovered.
You got to figure out how you're going to monetize it, because you'll make no money off of a book. You're going to lose money off of a book.
Right.
I mean, especially if you're trying to make lists, it's just no money in a book unless you're writing 50 Shades of Grey.
Right, exactly. Yeah. You've got to hit that demographic that wants it. And that's definitely one that hit the demographic. So,
Yeah.
so tell us a little more about Exit Rich. Obviously, we know how career driven you are. We see your successes and the things you've achieved. Tell us about the book. Tell us what's in the book.
Sure.
Maybe a little bit about what drove you to create this particular book.
Yeah. So when I wrote my first book, Sell Your Business for More Than It's Worth in 2013, and that was that was my first book that I ever wrote. And it was kind of it was a good book. I mean, everybody who reads it says, Michelle, it's a great book, but it didn't really do a deep dive into the business and why businesses fail and why businesses don't sell. So Exit Rich is really a deep dive into businesses and the mistakes business owners make and the pitfalls to avoid and how they should plan their exit. I call it the Seiler Tucker GPS exit, because the biggest mistake, Dean, that business owners make is they don't plan their exit. They don't think about selling until they have to due to a catastrophic event occurring. Right. And that can be internal or external. It's like COVID. Restaurants are like, oh, I got to sell now. Well, you can't sell now.
Right. No, everybody's freaking out. They're froze up right now.
So you got to really plan out your exit. And if you plan it accordingly, you won't be affected when the catastrophic events occur. And nobody thinks about planning their exit. Do you have kids, Dean?
I do. I have one son. Yep.
Okay. So I have a daughter, right? So parents, what do? We plan where our kids are going to go to preschool, where they're going to go to elementary, where they're going to go to high school, where they're going to go to college, who they're going to marry,
and we hope they stick to the plan.
Yes. What they're going to be when I grow up, a lot of parents want them to take over the family business. Well, kids don't want to take over the family business anymore. Yep. So you really have to plan your business like you plan your kids. And everybody plans for their kids' future, but they don't plan for their business exit.
Right.
And so in Exit Rich, you're going to learn about the Seiler Tucker GPS exit model, where you reverse engineer. From day one of starting or buying your business, you should be thinking about, all right, I want to sell my business for $10 million. Okay, great. You want to sell your business for $10 million? Guess what? GPS needs to know. It needs to know your destination, $10 million, but it needs to know where you're starting from. What are you worth today? What is your current location? Is your business worth $5 million today? Well, you're halfway there, right? And then what is your time frame? Is it 2 years, 3 years, 5 years? Okay, let's say you want to sell for $10 million. You got $5 million. You want to sell it in 5 years. Who are your buyers?
Right.
There's 5 different types of buyers. And out of those buyers, which type of buyers will buy your company? What is their criteria? And what are they looking for a $10 million business? Where does the gross revenues have to be? Where does COGS have to be? Where does gross profit margin? What's the EBITDA, earnings before interest, taxes, depreciation, amortization have to be, right? So then you have to ask yourself, why? Why do I want to sell $10 million? Because Dean, you just said it. We're so busy and we get so distracted. If we don't have a strong enough why, we'll never stay in the game.
Right.
We'll never get anything accomplished, right? So you have to have a strong why. So it's very important to plan that exit. 8 out of 10 businesses don't sell because they never plan their exit. And by the time they think about selling, their business is trending downward. And when it's trending downward, that's typically the worst time for you to sell your company.
Right, because then it's the buyer winning out.
Correct. And business owners, they come to me and I say, Michelle, I want to sell for $20 million. Okay, great. How'd you come up with that number? Well, that's what I need to retire off of.
Right.
Or that's what I need to send my kids to school, college, or that's, I got 5 weddings I got to pay for because I have 5 girls.
Yeah.
Or I need to buy another business, So the buyer doesn't care what you need.
Yeah. I mean, the seller's kind of like, at the end of the day, I have these assets and I feel like they're worth this much. And a buyer's like, no.
Well, the seller doesn't even base it on the assets. The seller bases it on what they need to exit.
Yeah.
Because the seller wants to take that money for their next phase of their life. So buyers will buy value. So really planning out GPS exit is so important, more so than ever before, because the business landscape has changed. I don't know if you know this, but there's 30.2 million businesses in the United States. Small business is a backbone of the United States economy.
Mm-hmm.
Small business employs over half of the US workforce. When I wrote Sell Your Business in 2013 and I did the research, 85 to 95% of all startups would fail within 1 to 5 years, right? We all
Yep.
know that. That's
And I
common
think that's,
knowledge.
yeah, I was going to say, I think that's pretty basic knowledge. I've owned several businesses, so I know that's the numbers I've always heard is
Yep.
if you make it past that first 1 to 5 year, you're good.
But guess what you haven't heard? Guess what you don't know now?
Hmm.
When I wrote Exit Rich in 2019 and I did the research again, and I was flabbergasted. I told my team to do the research again and again and again and again and again.
Double check the numbers. Yeah.
Because it's changed so much. The business landscape has changed so dramatically that only 30% of startups will now go out of business. So all of you trying to do a startup, you got a much bigger chance of success now.
Right. Yeah.
So 1 to 5 years, you have a 30% chance
Mm-hmm.
of going out of business. Now listen to this. Out of those 30.2 million businesses, 27.6 million businesses. Out of those 27.6, a study was done.
Mm-hmm.
Businesses that have been in business for 10 years or longer, 70% of those businesses are at risk of going out of business.
Wow.
70. So it shifted. You see the shift?
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
So why is that shift?
Mm-hmm.
And before we talk about why that shift is, let's talk about what that means. Now you hear about the big box stores all the time. Like you hear about Toys R Us just went out of business. Kmart went out of business. Steinmart, JCPenney's, GNC just closed down 900 locations.
Yeah.
What you're not hearing about are all the small private companies on every street corner in every city in every state across our great nation that are dropping like flies.
Yeah. That are just fighting tooth and nail to stay open. Yeah.
Right. And they're going to be forced into selling for pennies on the dollar.
Yep.
Close their business or file for bankruptcy. And when they file for bankruptcy, they're not just going to lose their business assets, they'll lose their personal assets too, because most business owners commingle personal with business. If you sign a personal guarantee, you just pierced the corporate veil.
Right.
If you take a mortgage against your real estate, you just pierced the corporate veil. Okay.
Yeah. And I know a lot of businesses, maybe you could give some insight on this. I know a lot of businesses tried to take up on the payroll loans and stuff. And I know a lot of small businesses that were struggling, they jumped on that. And what I'm hearing a lot now is that a lot of these smaller businesses, they literally cannot sustain and stay open. And so now they took these loans and they're closing their doors and they're stuck with these loans.
Well, the PPP will be forgiven if you meet certain criteria.
Right.
If you keep your employees.
Mm-hmm.
I've got several clients that took PPP. I took the PPP. Mine will be
Yep.
forgiven. I'm not really sure what the rules and regulations are if you close your business down, if your business goes out of business,
Mm-hmm.
if it's going to be forgiven or not. I would assume it is.
Yeah.
But you're supposed to keep your employees on payroll.
Yep.
But the reason why these businesses are going out of business is because, and we talk about this too in Exit Rich, they stopped. I call it AIM.
Right.
Failure to AIM. AIM is always innovate and market. Always innovate and market.
Mm-hmm.
Because those who make it easiest for the consumers to do business with them is the company that's going to win.
Right.
Amazon winning.
Yeah. You
Amazon
always want to
winning.
keep the face of the business up there. You always want to keep the face of the business. You want your marketing out there. You always want people engaging. Always.
But you got to innovate because Toys R Us did nothing over
Nothing.
60 years of doing things the same way. 60 years.
Yeah. They just expected
did
kids to come in
everything
and buy
the same
toys.
way. Right.
Yep.
And same thing with Blockbuster. Blockbuster saw the writing on the wall with Netflix and did nothing to innovate. So you can market all day long.
Yeah.
But if you don't innovate, if you don't ask your clients, what do you need? What do you want? How can I make it easier for you to do business with me?
Yep.
Then you're going to lose that market share. They're going to go somewhere else that's asking those questions, someone else who's delivering the goods.
Right.
And Amazon is winning because they make it so easy for the consumers to do business with them. And businesses that have been in business 10 years or longer stopped innovating
Mm-hmm.
and stopped marketing. And
Yep.
that's the big issue. And that's why these businesses are going out of business. So in Exit Rich, we talk about make sure you plan your exit and build a business to innovate and market, but also build a business with a solid foundation to run on all 6 Ps.
Okay.
So So let me know if you want to know about the 6
Yeah, what are the 6 Ps then? I do, and I'm very interested. You know, I'm listening to you talk about this, and especially on the innovation side. And where that touches with me is, like I said, I'm a general contractor. I own a construction business. You know, one of the biggest things I noticed, I used to have down in Florida when I lived in Florida, I had a landscape business, and I started my first landscape business when I was like 16. I took over my father's landscape business at 18. I sold that business and started another business, a bigger landscape business. I built that one up to several trucks, trailers, crew, sold that one to a friend and walked away. At the time I did that, the reason I did that was because I saw 1 million people flooding into the landscape industry. So every corner you had a new truck and trailer pulling up with a lawnmower. And you couldn't beat their prices. I mean, you know, guys with their kids would come out and start mowing lawns. You couldn't beat their prices. So I saw a target to get out. I also used to have a computer repair business. Now, when tablets and smartphones really started taking off, when iPads came out and stuff, I saw that was the time for me to get out of computer repair business, because nobody was repairing computers anymore. It was throwaway devices. They were going to buy new innovation and new stuff. And now I'm at a point with construction where I'm at that point again, where I'm noticing in my general area in Tulsa, Oklahoma, there is a new construction guy on every corner, every day popping up. There's a new company. And I'm like, there's no point in competing when you can't beat the price of that guy. I can continue with the quality work we do. I can continue with the clientele I have, or I can go ahead and, as your book said, I can start planning my exit right now.
Yep. Or you can try to pivot and get into a niche in the construction industry. We're working with a construction industry right now, a construction business right now that specializes. This is a pretty big company, but they didn't start out big, right? Every company's
Right.
small.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I think they start out like building houses and stuff, and now they build highways and bridges and
right. So they're more in the civil and infrastructure side.
Yep. And they do a lot of government work and a lot of core engineers work, and their EBITDA is about 10 million to 12 million a year. And we'll probably sell them between 60 to 70 million. So they transitioned. So you either have to look at your industry, and that's actually the second P, by the way. That's product.
Okay.
So
let's go back to the first, so I do them in order here.
The first P is people. You don't build a business, you build people, and people build the business, right? So you got to have the right people in the right seats. If you don't have and entrepreneurs are so, first of all, entrepreneurs are kind of control freaks. They like to do everything themselves. And I say, well, if I want it done right, I got to do it myself.
Yes. And I've done that so many times and cut my nose off to spite my face, because it tends to be unproductive once you build to a certain level.
Well, yeah, because you might do that, right? But you just let 5 other things fail.
Yes.
Because you didn't get to them. Yep. So you really got to hire your strengths. But I'm sorry, hire your weaknesses, focus on your strengths. And you got to have the right people in the right seats. You got to have a management team, and you got to create a business that works for you instead of you working for it.
Yep.
Because buyers don't want to buy a job. So people's number one. And if you are going to have 1099s, make sure it meets the government IRS regulations. Make sure you're not sticking 1099s into a manufacturing situation. Like we have a manufacturing company that we're selling, and they have a plant, and they have about 150 1099s working in the plant. You have one catastrophic event occur, you're out. It's
over. Yeah.
Plus, if an employee gets upset, gets disgruntled, they're going to go report you. Then before you know it, you have a class action against you. Yep. And it is a disaster. Yeah. So before we can even sell the business, we have to figure out the dollar amount to convert all the 1099s to W-2s. And you're going to lose some employees when you do that, because
of course
they want to pay cash. And that's going to decrease the EBITDA when you do that. But buyers are not going to buy a business with 150 1099s in the manufacturing.
they shouldn't.
Yeah. So people is number one. I mean, you really don't have a business without people. Photographers, they say they have a business, but they don't. They're only a photographer.
Yep.
Or, videographers. I mean, but physicians and dentists have a very hard time, because we have a dental practice right now that they want us to sell. But the problem is, it's one dentist. You pull that dentist out, there is no business. Yep. So people's number one. Number two is product. You have to look at your products or look at your industry and ask, is it dying or is it thriving? Do you have a Blockbuster or do you have an Amazon? Yeah. And if you're in an industry like you are in construction, then you have to figure out, okay, if I'm going to stay in this, particular construction area of who I service, building houses, whatever it is, remodeling,
Yep.
what's my unique selling propositions? How do I not compete on price? How do I compete on quality? How do I compete, what's my USP, my unique selling proposition? Or what can I pivot into?
Mm-hmm.
What doesn't have as much competition? Because I will tell you, this construction company doesn't have that many competitors.
Right.
So what can you transition into that doesn't have as many competitors, and it's more of a niche, and you can transition your business in there and be a lot more successful?
Mm-hmm.
Everybody should ask themselves this question. This is a great question. What business are you in? What business should you be in? What business are you in? What business should you be in? Now, you might not think much about that question, but let me give you an example.
To me, it's real important. For construction, I know I'm in the business for my client. So I know why I'm in business is to bring a service to the table, and the service we provide for the client.
Okay, let me give you an example, 2 examples that will help drive this home for you.
Mm-hmm.
Have you ever watched the movie The Founder?
I have not.
You have to watch that movie. Go watch it tonight and report back to me tomorrow.
I will.
So it's called The Founder. It's based upon the McDonald's brothers, the McDonald's restaurant, right? And so Ray Crockett, the McDonald's brothers are not the owners who built that into a multi-billion-dollar global organization. Ray Crockett did.
Okay.
All right. So you got to go watch that movie. But Ray Crockett was in the bank, and he had already leveraged everything he had. He already taken out loans. What I say, he took out a loan on his home and commingled his assets. Yep. And so he's telling the bank, look, I need to borrow money. And the bank is not listening to him and saying, look, we can't lend you any more money, etc. And there was a gentleman sitting in a cubicle next. It was working with another banker, and he overheard the conversation. So he followed Ray Crockett outside of the bank, and he said, listen, I couldn't help but overhearing your conversation. He said, what business are you in? And Ray Crockett said, I'm in the restaurant business. He said, no, that's not the business you're in. Mm-hmm. He said, I don't know what you're talking about, and I don't have time for this. I need money because I'm in the restaurant business. And he says, no, yes, you're in the restaurant business, but that's not the business you should be in.
Right.
The business you should be in is the real estate business. The real estate business. See, Ray was losing everything. And when you watch the movie, you'll get everything I'm saying. Yeah. Ray was losing everything, all of his assets, because he had franchisees. Franchisees were finding a location. They were buying the land. And if they weren't compliant, there was nothing Ray could do about it, right?
Right, yeah.
So the gentleman said, look, you need to be in the real estate business. You find the land, you buy the land, you build it out. You lease it to the franchisees. If they're not compliant, you give them 30 days of care and they're out.
Right.
That one question alone completely changed the trajectory of McDonald's franchise forever. They are the largest real estate holding company in the world.
Yeah. I mean, they're everywhere. Yeah, they're everywhere.
Because of that. If he didn't ask that question, Ray would have lost everything. Mm-hmm. So same thing with Steve Jobs. When he came back to Apple was failing. I mean, their stock was low, very low. They were failing. And Steve goes, what business are we in? And everybody kept saying, we're in the computer business. He goes, no, what business are we in? And they go, we're in the computer business. He's like, what business should we be in? And they said, we're in the computer business. We don't know what you're talking about. And Steve Jobs goes, no, we need to be in the communications business.
Yeah.
We need to be where you're anywhere in the world. You can connect with anyone, anywhere in the world with these cute little devices, no matter where you are. You have one of these in your pocket. That's how the iPhone was developed. That's how the iPad was developed, the iPod, the iCloud, everything, because of that one question. So every business owner should be asking themselves, and you know what? You really have to think about it, Dean. You can't just answer it like that. You really have to think thought in a quiet room. And I call this transformational thinking versus transactional thinking. But you really got to ask yourself, what business am I in and what business should I be in? So if you're in the business of, commercial building houses, maybe there's a different type of business, a different type of niche.
Right.
You need to get in. Does that make sense what I'm saying?
Yeah, totally makes sense. Yeah. And that's kind of where I feel like, I've been in construction 27 years, and I always go through about every 7 years, I kind of change up. I'll still do it, but I kind of get out of it enough to where it gives me a break, and then I jump back in a little bit full force. Yeah. But I always find it where I'm just like, I'm over it. I'm done. I don't want to do this anymore. And, and I scale over, I move on to something a little different, and then I pull back into it.
Well, it might just be a pivot in the construction business. Mm-hmm. It's like me in mergers and acquisitions. I asked myself, what business am I in? What business should I be in? I knew I had to start fixing businesses, growing businesses, because otherwise I would starve to death because so many businesses are not sellable, mm-hmm. So that's the second P. So you got people, you got product. The third P is processes. Mm-hmm. And processes are mostly overlooked. Most business owners never focus on process because they're so busy doing everything else.
Yep.
They never think about processes. So processes, really should be designed with the customer experience in mind. Again, another example from the founder. The McDonough brothers, not Ray Crockett, went to an empty tennis court, and they took their entire team. I think they had like 30 people, put them on a tennis court, drew out the process, and practiced it for hours. Who's going to take the order? Who's going to toast the buns? Who's going to cook the burger? Who's going to put the mustard on the bun? Who's going to put the two pickles? Who's going to package it? Who's going to get the customer?
They had a well thought out plan. Yeah.
With the customer experience in mind, because they had one objective that they were trying to obtain. Their objective, because that was back in the 40s and 50s when there were drive-throughs, mm-hmm. and it took forever to get your food, and the order was always wrong.
Yep.
So their whole objective was to deliver good tasting food, good tasting quality food, fast.
Right. Yeah. As fast as possible. Yeah.
And that's what that process allowed them to do. So processes are huge, and processes should be documented in operational manuals, employee handbooks, SOP charts, policy and procedure manuals, etc. But you'd be surprised how many business owners never really plan their processes out. And then the fourth P, which is the biggest value driver there is out of all P's, is proprietary and intellectual property. So branding is number one. The more well-branded a company is, the more money they're going to sell for. The Coca-Cola brand alone is worth $89 billion because no matter mm-hmm. where you are, how much money you have, everybody knows one name, Coke.
Yep.
McDonald's brand is probably worth about $250 billion. Guess who's the biggest brand?
I don't know. Where are we at?
Apple.
Yeah. I knew Apple was up there. I was thinking Amazon, and then I'm like, well, Walmart's got to be catching up by now.
Apple's $350 billion.
That's insane.
Yep.
Yeah.
So branding is very important. Branding is a huge value driver. Also, another big mistake that the business owners make, Dean, is they don't federally trademark their company name. Mm-hmm. I've seen lots of business owners lose their shirt, spend lots of money, end up having to go out of business because they did not trademark their company name. Don't just get a local trademark, get a federal trademark. It's not that expensive.
Right.
And also, if you have some unique ideas, get patents. Patents are huge value drivers. Also, contracts. If you're in landscaping, we have a client, and this is another thing that kind of surprises me sometimes with some business owners. We have a commercial landscape client. He does about $3 million a year, and he just does commercial, and it's mostly hospitality.
Right.
But when COVID hit, he didn't have any business because of hospitality. So I said to him, well, all your hospitality people, CFOs, CEOs, everybody that you do business with, they have homes.
Yeah. Yeah.
And their homes have yards.
Yep.
So why don't you go to them and do residential? He's like, no, I hate residential.
Yeah. And and that's how it is in the business. A lot of people just don't want to do one or the other.
I know, but then stop complaining.
Exactly. Do you want to be a success or do you want to be a failure? Yeah.
And here's the bottom line, you should be diversified. So if you lose your commercial clientele, at least you got residential over here.
Yeah. And you can also build two divisions, and that just expands your company.
Yeah. It's like my company. I have a company, we specialize in graphics for first responders. Well, now we want to also do graphics for commercial vehicles. Yeah. So we're going to have another division.
Yeah. And it's a great way to expand a company and set up its own marketing on that division. And those guys can run with it. And sometimes, that's the most success you can have with a business.
So another part, I call it the 6 pillars of proprietary, but you got to have, branding, federal trademark, also patents if you have any patents. If you don't, it's okay, but patents are value drivers. Contracts. So if you're in landscaping, any type of company that you can have contracts, contracts are huge value drivers, especially client contracts.
Yeah.
So the biggest mistake the business owners make, I will tell you, 99% of business owners never do this. There's a small little 3-line clause that you can put in your contract that says this contract is transferable. They never do that.
Right.
99% of all sales are asset sales, not stock sales. So if your contracts are not transferable, this will be a
the value. Dead in the water. Dead in the water.
Diligence. That's right. Yeah. Unless a buyer is willing to convert to a stock sale. We sold a large medical transportation company, and I kept telling them, get your contracts transferred, get them transferred, put the transfer clause in there. I'm doing it. They never did it. And then in due diligence, they lied to me and told me they did. Like, I'm not going to find out. And then in due diligence, we found out they didn't do it. Luckily, I was able to get my buyer to convert and to a stock purchase, but otherwise it would be a big problem. So contracts are very important. The other thing that's a big value driver is, let's say you have an e-commerce business and you're number 1 or number 2 or number 3 on Wayfair. Huge.
Yeah.
You know how many e-commerce businesses want to take their products and have that position?
Yep.
Or let's say you have a unique gadget and you own that, you corner that market on Amazon. Or let's say you have a skincare product and Glenn Beck is only promoting your skincare product.
Right.
I mean, that's what we call business real estate that has huge value to it. The 4th P is Patreons. So you always have to ask yourself, do you have customer concentration or client diversification? And if you have 60, 70, 80% of your revenue tied up into a few clients and you lose 1 or 2 clients, you can literally be out of business.
Yeah.
So you got to have customer. And then the other thing is, if a business has been in business 30, 40, 50, 60 years, a lot of the clients are aging out. So they got to make sure that they're doing what they need to do to innovate market, to go after the younger generation.
Yeah, to keep the same streamline they have. Yeah, makes sense.
The last P, the P that we all care about, is profits.
Which is weird. That's last. Everybody else always puts profit first.
Yeah, here's why I put it last. That's a good point.
Yeah.
I all this in my book, Exit Rich. But here's why I put it last. Because profit is never the problem. It is always a symptom of not having the right people in place. Always a symptom of being in a dying industry, not a thriving industry. Always a symptom of not having efficient, productive processes with the customer experience in mind. Always a symptom of not protecting your IP. It's always a symptom, never the problem.
Yeah. That makes total sense. Because I could think of so many times where I have a friend in business or whatever, and they tell me they're struggling. And I've watched their lifestyle throughout the course of the business, and I've just watched them, the new cars, the new boat, we just bought a house. And I'm like, well, it's great, you're making good profit. But at the end of the day, they're eating the profit up front and not focusing on the other ends of the business.
Well, not only that, but there are so many businesses that look profitable on paper, but they're like a week away from closing down.
Yes.
And if you don't really have good checks and balances in place, I can't even begin to tell you how many embezzlements I've seen, internal embezzlements where the employees are embezzling money from the owner. Or a recent experience was an $18 million company we sold, and I was helping with the due diligence, and I noticed that the CPA, the in-house CPA, kept stuffing stuff into drawers, and I kept trying to get to the payables, the receivables, all this stuff so we could true up working capital for the closing. The closing was like in 2 days. So when she left, I went in there and started snooping.
Yeah. I mean, you got to know. You got to have that information.
She was stealing money.
Wow.
Stealing money.
Yeah. Yep. And that's horrible. And again, I guess that goes right back to, like you said, having the right people in place. I mean, when you have a good team and you build a good team and you vet people well, you're not going to have those problems as often.
Let me just say this. I agree, but let me say this, Steve. Yes, vet people well, always have the right team, etc. But always inspect what you expect. Always trust but verify.
Right.
Because so many owners take a back seat. They're like, oh, I have a CPA. CPA, they're ethical, they're honorable, they're trustworthy. Oh, I have a CFO. Oh, I have this, I have that. But then they never have checks and balances. And then they're never inspecting anything. And before you know it, they were just robbed $1 million, didn't even know it.
Right.
So you still got to trust but verify. You still got to inspect what you expect, and you have to have those checks and balances in place to make sure you're not being ripped off.
Yeah, I want to dig deeper in this stuff later. So I'll probably have you come back on another episode. I know you're kind of on a time crunch for your next appointment and stuff. But please tell our audience where they can pick up your book,
Sure.
where they can reach out to you to get some more of this information or check you out on social media. And if you have time, tell us a little bit about the Academy as well.
Sure. So let me tell you about the book first, because
Yep.
that kind of will lead into the Academy.
Okay.
So the book, the book was supposed to come out in 2020, but COVID pushed that back.
Yeah,
Like it pushed everything back.
Yeah,
So, but
2020 has
here's
been
what we
amazing.
have. So the book is coming out in January. However, you can get the book today. So
Okay.
anybody that goes to exitrichbook.com, that's exitrichbook.com, buys a book for $24.79, which includes shipping. You
Okay.
can't even buy it on Amazon, Hudson, or Books A Million for that.
Right.
All of those websites or more. If
Okay.
you buy it for $24.79, you get the digital download immediately. Plus, you get the free book membership, which in that free book membership, you have me doing videos where I do deep dives into the 6 Ps, do deep dives into the mistakes and the pitfalls. Plus, I have samples of handbooks, processes, samples of due diligence checklist, LOIs, purchase agreements, closing docs, everything and anything if you're a business owner you would want to get your hands on. And then we also are giving 30 days free membership in the Club CEOs, which is a group of like-minded entrepreneurs where we do hot seats, Q&As, mastermind. And then when the book comes out, it's shipped to your door.
That's amazing.
$24.79. So
that's really a great deal. And just to be able to get all those resources from you is awesome.
Yes. And Seiler Tucker Academy. So when they buy the book at exitrichbook.com, they'll be given a login to go into Seiler Tucker Academy. And then that's where the book membership is. That's where Club CEOs is. And we also have an educational course coming out called Build to Sell, which takes a business owner through all of these strategies that we've been talking about today in order to get their business ready to maximize their sell.
That's huge. That's huge. And we have a lot of audience members that are business owners as well. And so I think this will be great resources. When I post this up and get it linked for you, it's going to have all these links tied into the description. So this will all let our audience find you a lot easier. I really appreciate having you on here today. And like I said, I'd love to have you back in the future and get you back on another episode where we can dig a little deeper, or maybe you can give us a little more resources into what you do.
Yeah, absolutely. I can, I will never stop talking.
For sure. I want you, I look forward to getting you back. This is just the most valuable resource is just this short episode, but when we get you back, we'll dig a little deeper and try to mine into some of the stuff because you're so knowledgeable. This is stuff that every business owner should have.
Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure being here.
You have a great day.
All right, you too. Thanks, Steve.
Take care.